Vamos lá. Acho que é aqui que começa, não é? Porquê que ela veio... What? Ela veio de fatinho? Já não veio de coisa apanhada? Ok, vamos avançar só porque tipo...
That.
Ah, ok.
Or Laura Heard.
Ok, vai testemunhar. E o Johnny hoje. O Johnny hoje vai ser extra.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please state your name
Yes, it's Amber Laura Heard.
and what is your address?
I live in Yucca Valley, California.
And how old are you, Amber?
I am 36. I just celebrated.
Okay. And do you have a daughter?
I do. She also celebrated her birthday recently. She's 1.
Okay. And what is your profession?
I am an actor, mostly.
Okay. Now, why
Yeah,
are you
that's-
here?
I am here because my ex-husband is suing me for an op-ed I wrote.
And how do you feel about that?
I struggle to have the words. I struggle to find the words to describe how painful this is. This is horrible
Ele nem olha para ela.
for me to sit here for weeks and relive everything. Hear people that I knew, some well, some not. My ex-husband, with whom I shared a life.
Ai, a caralho, a cara dele.
Speak
Ele nem olha para ela.
about our lives in the way that they have.
Eu acho que isto é o... Ele parece mais com um comportamento de vítima.
This is the most painful and difficult thing I've ever gone through, for sure.
Now, there was a trial in the UK in July of 2020 where Mr. Depp had sued the Sun newspaper and Dan Wooten. Do you recall that?
Yes,
And what was your level of participation in that lawsuit, in that trial?
well, I was not party to that lawsuit. I was a witness. I suppose the primary witness, since it dealt with the truth of the relationship. But
Anónimo, obrigado por dar o seu ao Kiko, pá. Muito obrigado. Agradecido. Obrigado pelo sub, man. Thank you very much, man. Obrigadíssimo. Obrigado. Obrigado, man. Thank you.
shared with Johnny.
And what, if any, role did you have to play with respect to, for example, witness statements and testifying?
Objection, compound.
Ixi.
I said, for example.
Overruled.
I had to write.
Quem está lá atrás? É Camilo
I think I gave
Vasquez.
7 witness statements under oath testimony. I sat on the stand for 4 days under mostly cross-examination. And up until this point, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to
No
do.
fame, exato.
Thank you, Amber. I'm going to take you back, and if you can just tell the jury a little bit about your background, tell us where you grew up.
I come from Austin, Texas, a small town outside of Austin that you probably haven't heard of. No one has. It's called Maynard. And I was raised by my mother and my father. And I grew up with a little sister, although I have a big sister as well.
And your little sister's name is?
Her name is Whit Heard.
And how much of an age difference is there between the two of you?
Whitney and I are about 1 year, I think we're 16 months apart. So right next to each other.
And what did your father do for a living?
My father broke
Was it the
horses
regular?
and did construction.
Ah.
He painted
Real
houses, and hunted and fished. But that was for fun.
And what did your mom do?
For a living. Ah, ele caçava e pescava. Mas isso era para o fun.
She worked for the state of Texas.
Ok. A fazer o
Let me
quê?
just, since you talked about the breaking horses, can you just tell the jury what your role is in assisting your dad on that and what is involved in breaking horses?
Objection leading.
Pois, sabes o que é que isto vai?
Can you just tell me about?
Overruled.
You just got to stay on, basically. I would help him. I was more of a crash test dummy. You know, when you train a horse, it's a wild animal. It doesn't necessarily like to be ridden, and there are people out there who are crazy enough, like my dad, to pick that as a profession, I guess. And he was really good with horses, and I was the son he never had, so it was my job to, stay on.
And what, if anything, did you learn from your father about how to react to the horses?
Well, with training horses, I guess the key.
Pois eu não
The-
estou a
the
perceber,
key things are
não estou a perceber a
not
relevância
show
disto.
fear,
O que, é importante que ela explique porque é que o pai dela...
not get intimidated, not show fear, be tough and calm.
Super calmo.
Tell the jury a little bit about your educational background during those growing up years and your work experience.
Também não percebo a ideia.
I worked any job that I could from the time I was really young.
É para fazer
wanted
parecer que ela é
to
muito humilde. Ok.
Get out of Texas and do something with
Mano,
my
o
life
Johnny
and
não olhou para
see
cima uma
things
única
and do
vez, bro.
things. So I was in school and really pushed myself to. I just always pushed myself to be able to accelerate the process. I wanted to, get out of school as fast as I could, and I wanted to do more things with my life than stay in Texas.
So what types of things, so where did you go to school when you were younger?
I was a scholarship kid at a Catholic school.
Importante
growing
dizer
up.
que era scholarship
Several
kid.
different Catholic schools, but they were always in the other, on the other side of town.
Pronto,
in
para
the
explicar que é católica, muito
wealthier part
religiosa.
of town, and I grew up quite working class, and
Outra vez.
and thankfully with as long as I maintained an A average, I enjoyed the benefit of a scholarship, and I did that until I realized that I could take my GED and SATs early, and
Basicamente
I did
é uma
that,
bolsa.
placed out of school.
Era aluna de bolsa.
Effectively left school 16 years old, I believe.
And what did you do for work during those younger years?
I took any job that I could. I worked at my father's construction company, sometimes, just administrative stuff. I mean, it was a small company. But I answered phones, and I worked at a modeling agency that was also, offered photography classes, makeup classes, hair and makeup classes for people that were pursuing a career in entertainment. And I started taking classes that I paid for by working there, effectively as a trade. And I eventually worked there long enough to be able to pay for my headshots, which are the pictures that you use in the industry to promote yourself, in whatever, acting, modeling, or both.
Ok.
And what, if any, charitable work did you do when you were still young?
Certo.
It started off as a requirement for the school I went to, and then
Caridade.
I liked it so much, I think, because it meant I wasn't at home.
É a Camille Vasses que
It was
está lá
important to
atrás.
me is just to not spend time at home, and I really loved meeting people. So I worked at the soup kitchen every morning before school, during the school year, for about 4 years.
Não faço ideia, bro.
There
Não sei,
were
Didi.
I didn't go on
Não sei quando é que vamos
weekends,
voltar a
but
fazer
on
isso.
weekends I would do various things. Worked at children's children's museums typically, because they would work with younger volunteers, and mostly soup kitchens and things involving children. I worked at the with deaf kids for a while, and I love it.
And when you worked
I love
with the deaf kids, what, if anything, did you do to learn to be able to work with them?
Objection leading and 404. And relevance, Your Honor. Overruled.
Mas
Well, I taught myself how to sign basic.
a gaja
sign
dá overrule a
language,
tudo, é que realmente isto
and
isto
then
não faz
I,
sentido nenhum.
I pursued it. I audited a translator.
Mano, o JD nem sequer está tipo. Ele deve estar desligado.
Which I ended up going to
Está a
get out of high
desenhar.
school early later on. But I would audit classes. The teachers never wanted to kick the random 12-year-old out of their class, I suppose. So I remarkably was able to audit, I think, the majority of 2 semesters, and that's also helped me learn.
So how did
Eia, mano, que ranço, puto.
you end up in Los Angeles?
Super contente. Teve com cara de enjoada durante 3 semanas. Agora.
I did a small job in Texas where I played a part in a movie, and the actor in the movie that I was playing opposite had an agent visiting him from LA, and I met her on set, and she said that she had heard about me from another bit part I did. I was taking jobs in Austin for really anything, to be an extra, to apply I did makeup once.
Ai, que trabalhadora.
Nothing, no job was too small or, for me. So I put myself out there, and she had heard about me, and she said, I have heard about you in this town, and I'd love to meet you in LA if you're ever out in LA. And I was like, when can I come? And she made an appointment with me for the following week, and I used all but $180 or something to get out there, and I landed. I didn't know anyone. I was 17, and I've effectively been there ever since, I suppose.
So when you arrived in Hollywood, please tell the jury what you did to get moving there, get going.
I went to every audition, every casting, every meeting.
Mas ela teve à tarde a
testemunhar.
Não.
I put myself out there. I didn't have a car.
Só agora é que foi
It was
testemunhar.
expensive. So I took the bus around LA. It was before smartphones. I had a Thomas guide in my bag and a change of tank tops. Not that it mattered, but I went to about 10 auditions sometimes a day, and would change clothes if I needed to in the back of the bus I was taking, and I just
Eu não vou ver absolutamente nada que está acontecendo em direto. Isto vai chegar lá, portanto, vemos isso quando tivermos que acontecer.
And then I got a bit part on another thing, and then eventually my roles kind of became more important or bigger, and it's been a slow progression, I guess, since then, of doing either tiny bit parts in bigger movies or doing, larger roles in movies that no one would see. And I guess, it still is kind of like that.
So I'm going to ask you to go from 2002 to 2009. If you could just describe for the jury a little bit what types of parts you had.
Ai, man, foda-se. Ok, vamos avançar.
Got the, you're it, kid. You're the dream. Hunter wrote this part, and you're the dream. You're it, kid.
And
amazed.
Please describe for the jury what that means. What was the Rome Diary and this Hunter Thompson? What was the concept here, and what role were you playing?
Well, it was my understanding that he was get back to set, and he kind of kicked his foot up in the air and basically kind of lifted the back of my bathrobe up. And
can I just stop you there? Why were you wearing a bathrobe?
Because I was doing a scene. It was a period film, so it took place in the 50s. And so I had all of this old undergarments that are for that time era on. And the scene involved me changing. So I had all the costume on. And he kind of picked up the back of my robe with his boot. And I kind of turned around and laughed, giggled, I didn't know what to make of it at the time, and I just kind of giggled and batted it away playfully, and he kind of playfully kind of pushed me down on this like bed sofa that was in his trailer, just playful and flirtatious, and he said, "Yum," and he kind of like lifted up his eyebrows like that, and I just giggled, laughed it off, kind of batted him away, and moved on, went back to set.
Mas quem é
And
que isto?
were you in a relationship at that time?
I was.
Ok,
And
está
was
fácil.
Mr. Depp in a relationship at that time?
That was my understanding, yeah.
Okay. And did anything
okay.
else of significant happen during that,
Foi o
that
que o
time
Johnny
period
lhe
while
disse.
you were filming with Mr. Depp, other than what you've told us?
We just had this, it was a friendship, flirtatious thing.
Okay.
I felt chemistry. I felt this other thing that went beyond the pale of my job, for sure.
Ok.
TJ
Xavier, obrigado pelos 8 meses, pá.
TJ Izmido SHD, TJ
Obrigado, man,
Izmido
obrigadíssimo.
SHD.
Obrigado, Mido, obrigado pelos 8 meses, pá. Muito agradecido. Obrigado. Ok. Obrigado, Xavier, obrigado pelos 8 meses, pá. Obrigado.
Johnny clearly felt that way about me, had indicated to me that that's how he felt in many different ways, but at the same time, we were both in relationships, and
Olha, a
it is a
câmera dela
job,
travou.
and it was intimidating, and I just remember feeling kind of intimidated and a little nervous about that, and I also was in a relationship, so we went our separate ways, and I didn't hear from him for a long time.
And that's, so approximately how long were you filming in Puerto Rico?
Epá, ó, Tiago, foda-se, mano.
A few months is
Por
not
amor de
enough.
Deus, bro.
Alright.
Tipo, nós estivemos aqui a ver 3 semanas de testemunhas. Puto, estás a gozar com a nossa cara, certo? Puto, não ser biased. 3 semanas, puto. E quantos anos é que já houve desta situação? Toda a gente já ouviu falar sobre isto. É preciso ainda mais. Foda-se,
When you
mano.
left
Ridículo, puto.
Puerto Rico in the filming, when is the next time that
Estou a
you
tentar
had
resolver.
any contact from Mr. Depp?
Pode ser.
Communications, written.
Day, and I didn't even have his phone number, so it was quite unexpected. He called me a second time, but I don't think we actually connected, or we didn't stay on the phone because we didn't really speak. But the first time was the only time I actually spoke to him, and he invited me over to his house under kind of he said that we could get Bruce, who was the director. to
Mano,
come
qualquer
over,
pessoa com 2
something
dedos
about
de
the
testa
movie.
percebe que esta
It's
gaja
clearly not about the movie.
claramente
You know
está a
what it is.
mentir sobre esta situação.
So I said,
Claramente,
I said,
mano.
my friends are
As próprias marcas de maquilhagem vieram desmentir as merdas que ela diz. Montes de gente veio a público desmentir as merdas que ela diz. Puto, claramente, ela já foi provada, ela já disse que lhe bateu exatamente naquele áudio. Portanto, o que é que tu queres mais, mano? Ela pode não ser condenada por difamação, mas efetivamente, foda-se, efetivamente, esta cena vai sempre remar a favor do Johnny.
lavish of first, but at the same time, we were both in separation right now, and it's been, about a couple of months, but that's normal. And he said, well, that's same with me. It's been, I can't remember exactly how long he said it had been, but that he had split from the mother of his kids, and said that he understood.
All right, and then what happened next?
Then we drank red wine and continued to talk, and the talking became us, reconnect. It was like reconnection was almost instant. It was just chemistry. It's hard to explain that, but we sat on the couch and we talked. And
Mano, eu não estou a dizer que o Johnny Depp é um santo, atenção, mas acho que nesta situação em particular foi completamente injustiçado, mano. Completamente.
it felt like there was it felt like there was an electricity to the room, and so I felt when I was alone with him anyway, and it was instant again. I was like, whoa. So on the couch we talked finished some wine, and then I got up and left. And as I went to leave, he grabbed both sides of my face, similar to what he did in Puerto Rico when we were filming that scene. And he kissed me, and I kissed him back.
And
Well,
what happened next with respect to any relationship with Mr. Depp?
Well, then we fell in love.
yeah.
We went on this press tour, and we went. It was a beautiful and strange time. You know, we were flying from one, not together, but going from one city to the next, Europe, New York, Los Angeles, as I said, and we're just traveling around talking
Sim,
about
ela
this
está a
movie
ser julgada hã? Puto, sim, ela está a ser julgada por difamação, mas puto, eu não estou a perceber o teu ponto de vista, Tiago. Portanto, tu achas que por ela ser ilibada por difamação, isso faz com que seja justo somehow e as pessoas tenham que parar de a acusar? É isso? É que, man, claramente este julgamento é um julgamento fantasma, mano. Não interessa se ela ganha ou perde o julgamento. O que interessa aqui é o Johnny Depp recuperar a imagem que perdeu à pala desta gaja e das mentiras que ela andou a dizer durante anos e anos, meu. Pá, eu aqui só vejo uma hipótese. É o gajo recuperar a imagem que, aliás, já está a recuperar, felizmente. Felizmente.
we did together, that we participated in together, and we were falling in love. I mean, it was just, at the first dinner in London, he sat me next to me. He produced the film and was a part of controlling the film and was responsible for different things than I was as an actor having a small part in it. And we went on this press tour, and I think in London he had me sat next to him at a dinner, and then we ended up spending the night together in my hotel room. And for the rest of the press tour, it was on. I'll put it that way.
All right. And how long approximately did the press tour go?
Já tirou os óculos, o homem.
I don't know exactly how long it lasted. I think, there were press engagements in this city for a few days, and then another city for a few days, and then there was a break, and then there was another press opportunity, I believe. So it was kind of spread out over maybe a month, if I'm guessing.
So when you returned to Los Angeles, what, if anything, took place with any relationship with Mr. Depp?
Oh, Tiago, tu não estás a perceber, bro. Aquilo que... Foda-se. Ai, que caralho, bro. Mas realmente é mentira que ela sofreu violência doméstica e que ele foi difamado. Tu sabes que as coisas são um bocadinho mais complexas do que isso, ó, Tiago. Não é? Imagina, não chega a tu dizeres é mentira que ela sofreu de violência doméstica, ele foi difamado. Não é assim que funciona, bro. Tipo, tu tens demasiada coisa aqui. Ou seja, aquilo que se quer provar é que o Johnny Depp não é um agressor. Provavelmente o que aconteceu foi que a relação deles era extremamente tóxica e abusiva de ambas as partes. Isso concordo. Acredito que o gajo não lhe tenha batido. Acredito que o gajo não lhe tenha batido. Acho que o gajo pode ter sido de alguma forma violento e ter falado de forma agressiva em alguns instantes, mas chegar-lhe a bater, não sei. Não sei, porque eu acho que ela se esforça demasiado para tentar passar a narrativa que ele lhe bateu. Não parece uma cena natural, meu. Parece uma cena bué da forçada, só para as pessoas acreditarem que ele lhe bateu. Todas as situações em que ela diz que ele supostamente a agrediu parecem bué da fixe, meu. Tipo, parecem bué estranhas. Tipo, não batem bem, percebem? Não fazem sentido.
Well, once we were back from the press tour, we had this, whirlwind romance kind of just in these...
Ela parece que já estava
places
a
all
planear
over,
esta merda toda, já estava a prever isto
we're
tudo.
falling in love and
Para lhe
not
sacar
able
guito.
to really show it because the world didn't know about the split between he and his former partner. And of course, as a woman, I was like, is that troubling? And I'd ask him, no, he swore to me that they hadn't even shared a bed for a year and that they were protecting the kids and not publicizing it. So, or not making it known to the press. And so we kind of had to be a little bit under the radar. Not a little bit, we had to be really under the radar, because as Johnny pointed out, that the world would blame me, and call me a homewrecker, even though I had nothing to do with it.
Ok.
So we were secretly dating, and then
Isso por acaso,
You know, was-
isso por acaso parece bem uma atitude de uma pessoa que é extremamente violenta e tóxica. Uma pessoa que protege a gaja que se meteu na relação. Em vez de tipo
it was beautiful.
de tentar queimar para se safar.
It was I felt like
Pá, olha, João,
this
vi.
man knew me and saw me in a way that no one else had. I felt he understood me. I felt he understood where I came from. I felt like
Claro,
I felt
exatamente.
that like when I was around Johnny, I felt like the most beautiful person in the whole world.
Yeah.
You know, it made me feel seen, made me feel
Vai
$1
chorar.
million. And
Ai. A cara
kind
dele,
of-
não. A cara
really,
dele.
you know, he just lavish gifts and lavish expressions of love, and how he had never met a woman like me. I mean, I remember he took the foil off of this bottle and put it on my ring finger, and I had only been with him like days, you know, or maybe it was weeks at the time. Yeah, it was probably about a few weeks, but it just felt very intense. But we weren't doing normal life stuff. We weren't like stuck in traffic with each other. We weren't going to the grocery store and doing life. We were like hiding in these places around the world. He has so many homes. And so we'd be in one of those homes, or my home at the time, and it would be like a bubble, like we were in this little bubble of secrecy, and it felt like a warm glow, as we would say. Just music and the kind of books that we both loved, and poetry that we both knew by heart, and it was it felt like
Aí a cara
it
do
felt
gajo.
like a
meu.
dream. It felt like absolute magic.
Que giro.
So while you're dating, I take it you're dating at this point, right?
Yeah,
Or
sorry if
you're
I didn't make that clear.
falling in love, you're also dating, right? Okay.
Yes.
Did there come a
Yeah, pois
time early on that you ended up going to his Bahamas island?
Yes.
Oh, Tiago,
So
porque
shortly
imagina,
after,
eu acho que é difícil tu acreditares numa pessoa que já se provou que mentiu. Estás a perceber? Várias vezes, em várias instâncias. Como é que tu estás a propor à opinião pública, man, que dê a oportunidade à gaja? Eu por acaso estou a ouvi-la, deixa a gaja falar. Se eu não quisesse ouvir o que ela tinha para dizer, não estava a ver isto. Percebes? Pá, quero ouvir a versão dela. No entanto, claro que já vou de pé atrás, não é? Claro que já vou de pé atrás. Principalmente em relação a tudo aquilo que se diz dela, meu. Até as pessoas próximas dela dizem que ela é uma gaja que não é de fiar. Como é que eu posso confiar numa pessoa destas? Eu, que nem a conheço de lado nenhum. É que ela já mentiu bué de vezes, bro. Tipo, não, mano,
They
não...
started dating October of 2011, and
Uma pessoa que é diagnosticada com borderline personality,
as I
caralho,
mentioned, this bubble, you know, where he'd come over to my house and not
puto, ela
leave
teve
for
3 semanas com cara de enterro, chega aqui e está toda contente. Não se está a perceber, bro.
3 or 4 days, you know, just smoking cigarettes and playing music and reading poetry to me or painting me.
Imagina, a forma como ela está a falar sobre isto, ainda para mais uma coisa tipo que me está agora a fazer alguma confusão é, ela está a falar sobre isto com o Johnny como se fosse tipo a melhor cena que lhe aconteceu na vida. Mano, imaginem, eu não quero ser pá, assim tão drástico, mas imaginem, vocês acham que uma vítima de violência doméstica fala sobre a relação que teve com o agressor da forma como esta gaja está a falar? Parece que foi um conto de fadas. Pá, eu acho que nenhuma vítima de violência doméstica faz isto, meu. A romantizar bué. Tipo, quanto muito tens nojo daquilo que se passou com a pessoa. Falas com nojo daquilo que aconteceu. Não esta merda, puto. Ela parece estar super feliz. Parece estar super nostálgica. Não interessa se está a falar do início, puto. Tu passando numa relação super tóxica e abusiva com uma pessoa, Tu não vais falar dos primeiros momentos. Estiveste com a pessoa como se fosse... Mano, eu vou-te dizer, eu já tive uma relação super tóxica na minha vida e eu juro-te que não me lembro do início dessa relação. Pode ter sido espetacular, pode ter sido incrível, que deduzo que tenha sido, senão eu não entrava nisso, né? Não me dava a conhecer. Puta, eu não me lembro disso. Só me lembro das merdas péssimas que aconteceram depois. Ou seja, tipo, man, eu acho que ninguém que passa por uma merda destas vai falar sobre o início da relação com nostalgia. Isto é a minha forma de olhar para isto. Atenção.
You know, just
Oh,
talk.
Denis, mas o que é que eu estou a dizer, puto? Eu não estou a dizer exatamente isso, que isto é jogada. É isto que eu estou a dizer, puto. Por outras palavras, mas estou. A gente não precisamos do teu conselho máximo, Denis. Nós estamos a perceber. A cena já há 3 semanas, bro.
And then he would disappear.
Ela deu-lhe uma
And there
faca
was
de
just no way
prenda,
to
essa
get
não
hold of
sabia.
him, no way to contact him. At first, I didn't really think anything about it, but he disappeared at one point, and then came back and said he was dealing with some health issue, and
Agora vai voltar a ser. Agora vai começar a ser um pesadelo, querem ver? Vai rápido, vai de repente.
I think that's when I learned he had an island, and I was
Claro,
on a
exato.
trip.
Nem
with
tu nem
a
ninguém,
friend
acho
of
eu,
mine
Costa.
in Spain, and it was for the holidays, and I kind of rerouted my trip so I could come and land in LA landing in Miami instead of LA, so I could go and meet him on the island. And he had Keenan come and meet me on that trip, like in Miami. I get off one plane, get onto another, and go and join him on his private island. And I noticed he was drinking Beck's and tea, but like lots of tea.
E então?
And I didn't foolishly think anything of it. I just, thought the man really, seriously, I missed it before, but really, really loves tea.
I didn't think anything about him. Não pensei nada sobre isso, pá. Realmente, pá, foi uma cena que me passou completamente ao lado. Mas realmente lembro-me de pensar: ai, man, este gajo curte mesmo bué de chá. Puto, what?
And we had this beautiful, I don't know, less than a week probably, trip in the Bahamas, a private island, beautiful sandy beaches. It's a scene that you just don't. I had never experienced anything like that.
Espetáculo.
It was a beautiful place, a beautiful time, and
Foi lindo, mágico.
I fell head over heels in love with this man.
Pronto, espetáculo. E depois
So,
mudou tudo.
After the Bahamas, I assume you came back. And are we talking now early 2012?
Estamos a falar num espaço de meses.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Nem um ano chegou
what
isto.
were you doing work-wise while you were dating him in this early stage?
What I always do, I would be taking job to job to job.
Quanto tempo é que eles estiveram juntos? Eles tiveram casados durante meses, certo? Tipo, nem chegou a um ano. Mas quanto tempo é que eles namoraram, exatamente?
One movie to the next. Mostly not filming in LA. So, weirdly, you live in LA to
Eu também acredito que ele tivesse mesmo apaixonado por ela. Casados. Chegou a um ano? Ok.
We would go back to
Mas
this
a namorar,
bubble,
quanto tempo?
like insular bubble with beautiful, blaringly loud music and no one else and nothing else. And
Bubble, lá
then,
vem ela que é bubble.
I'd go off to work. And so would he. Well, eventually, yeah, he left to shoot Lone Ranger, I believe.
Okay. Now, we've heard a little bit about Lone Ranger, and that's about mid-2012, is that right, when he was
Okay.
shooting that? That sounds right, mid-2012, yeah.
And were you shooting anything at that time?
I was shooting...
Machete
I believe I
Kills?
was shooting Machete Kills in Austin. I had a small part in a Robert Rodriguez film that shot in Austin.
E de repente começou a
but,
ter papelões. Reparem.
I think Johnny was shooting and then having some time off, and there was just a lot of travel.
Não, Ren, não tenho código de desconto.
And so, what, if any, visiting did you do with Johnny while he was on his set for Lone Ranger, and where was he?
Well, he was filming all over the Southwest, and at some point I came to visit him and on one of his locations, and I would stay in the house because I couldn't really occasionally I would leave with his security guards, but I didn't really have anything to do but visit him for a few days. So I'd cook and kind of stay at home and paint or whatever and wait for him to come home and have dinner ready. And
Puto, estamos a falar, Tiago, estamos a falar de uma pessoa que foi a psicóloga dela, mano. Com caralho, bro. Foi chamada pelos advogados do Depp como testemunha. No entanto, foi psicóloga dela. Foi uma pessoa que lhe deu consultas.
we'd have these little bubbles.
Isso
but
faz dela
kind of
uma pessoa
scattered
que faz dela
throughout the
invalidade
Southwest,
para pôr
as he was filming.
e depois pôr
And
a
at the
situação.
time, Johnny had, when I first arrived at one of these locations,
Puta,
it was the
Tiago,
first
tu
time
pareces
Johnny
bué da
told
fã
me
da Chaval. És fã da DC,
that
é
he
isso?
had a health issue.
Conta-me. Gostas do
something with his
Aquaman?
liver, and
Tiago,
he wasn't,
que é que se está a passar?
That's why he was not drinking. He was drinking a lot of tea. Like a lot of tea.
Okay. And so we've heard a little testimony about boots. What, if anything, did you do to help Johnny with his boots?
Well, I mean, I suppose that I took off his boots and it made an impression on him, and I was happy to, anything I can do to show love. Certainly how I felt about him. But if he wanted to take off his own boots, he certainly could.
Did you
Man,
pick
olha ele a
up
rir-se.
any knives during that time period?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
What if anything did you do with respect to knives during the time period you were with him in the Lone Ranger?
Objection leading.
What if anything?
Overruled.
Johnny had a thing for turquoise, and that eventually, being in the Southwest, it can happen really quickly. I also too really love turquoise, and he has he loved knives. He loves a lot of things. When Johnny loves things, he does it a lot, and lots of it. So he had these daggers that he had given me that they were beautiful in design. And they're, long, curved daggers. And he just talked a lot about knives, had a knife and gun collection.
Putz, se ela cancelasse o julgamento agora, estava completamente fodida. Eu não sei se ela tem noção. É que o facto de ela estar a ter uma oportunidade para falar pode ser que a ajude de certa forma, mano. Mas é que se ela cancelasse o julgamento agora, estava completamente fodida. Toda a gente aí a cancelar, bro. Tipo, estão 3... Acho que são 3 milhões e 400 mil pessoas assinaram a cena para ela ser despedida do Aquaman, meu. Vocês têm noção o que é 3 milhões e 400 mil pessoas querem que vocês sejam despedidos, bro? Tipo, é fodido.
And was quite proud of it. And at some point, I don't really remember exactly when it was, but
E ela já não vai ter mais ofertas de trabalho. E ele, cada vez mais, não sei se vocês viram, mas há uma notícia a circular de que aparentemente o Robert Downey Jr. convidou o Johnny Depp para fazer de vilão no Sherlock Holmes. No próximo filme do Sherlock Holmes. Portanto, ele já vai começar a ter trabalhos outra vez, mano.
at some point I picked up what I thought was a really beautiful turquoise handled knife. And I had it engraved with a saying that Johnny would say to me all the time, which I, thought was romantic, as funny as that is to say now.
And what was the
Bro.
expression, the saying?
Until death, hasta la muerte in Spanish.
Now, by the time that you're visiting Mr. Depp during his shooting of Lone Ranger in the June through August 2012 timeframe, what, if any, relationship has he developed with your family?
Oh, well, starting really early on, Johnny was so kind, so generous to my family, but especially my mom and dad. He met my dad, and my dad's a big personality. He's a rowdy guy, and Johnny just all of a sudden, I had never noticed, Johnny have a southern. All of a sudden, Johnny had this southern accent and was really like buddies with him, and they really seemed to get along very well. They're, just like instantly he was giving my dad gifts. He gave him guns. He gave him knives. They
Ou seja, não se...
had this. I mean, Johnny just really just showered my dad, and my dad's a working man, salt of the earth guy, and he was just like, floored. He's getting all these amazing gifts and being invited to come onto these locations.
Também estou bem confuso.
Johnny's this big movie star, and my dad was just like,
Mas eu não estou a perceber o que é que se está a passar aqui.
Himself, not if I hadn't. And he just instantly, he gave my mom jewelry.
Eu acho que o que ela está a tentar fazer aqui, eu vou explicar. Ela basicamente vai começar por dizer bué da bem dele. Tipo, que ele era o maior, que ele era super excelente. Blá blá. E a dada altura, isto vai dar uma grande turn. E ele de repente vai ser um vilão do caralho. Estão a ver? Tipo, aposto convosco.
You see me while I was visiting Johnny on Lone Ranger in some part of the Southwest. I think it was Colorado. He gave her this beautiful turquoise necklace, and I mean, they were definitely taken by him.
And what, if any, relationship had Mr. Depp forged with Whitney by this time, your sister?
I believe the relationship came a little bit later as they got to know each other, but he did the same thing with my sister and just really found a bond with them that,
Portanto, toda a gente o adorou.
It was he tried to do anything and everything he could to make them feel like special, and they did.
Wow.
My mom, my dad, and my sister.
Grande Johnny,
What, if
pá.
any,
Excelente pessoa.
relationships did
Obrigado,
Depp
Amber.
form with your friends?
Podemos parar já aqui. Imaginem, se o julgamento acabasse aqui, estava tudo bem, pá. Vivíamos felizes para sempre.
Well, Johnny's so generous and can be this really like overly generous almost, like showering you with.
Man, e ela continua a dizer que ele é extremamente generoso, pode ser ainda generoso, uma pessoa que sofre de violência, e diz as coisas que ela disse naquele artigo sobre ele. A mim não me entra na cabeça que ela consiga dizer isto, meu. Mano, tu última instância, tu odeias a pessoa. Tu não consegues dizer uma única coisa de positivo sobre ela. Mesmo que saibas que há, tu não consegues dizer. Como é que esta gaja consegue fazer esta figura? Eu não consigo perceber.
Gifts and compliments and just, I mean, like, and he has access and means to really, we're not talking about giving you a card. We're like talking about just these like extravagant trips or these extravagant gestures, and it's a lot. And he did that with my close friends. I relied heavily on my friends, and had a pretty strong support network with them. And he really just showered them with generosity and love and light, and invited them to come to these exotic places and flew people here and there. I mean, it's incredibly.
Portanto, ele proporcionou-lhe a vidinha espetacular. Pronto.
So going back
Okay.
to the filming of the Lone Ranger, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do with respect to a horse?
Objection leading.
What, if anything?
Overruled. Johnny at one point insisted on buying me a horse, and I, of course, said that's extravagant. There's no way I could accept that. That's how will I take care of that horse? It's so extravagant.
Ai, que extravagante. Oh, Johnny, então foda-se. Pronto, acabámos de chegar da tua ilha privada no outro dia que te pagaste-me o voo para ir para lá e ofereces armas aos meus pais e estas facas com diamantes e o cara. Pá, mas um cavalo, Johnny. Um cavalo é demais.
Extravagant. So I said no, of course. Eventually,
E há 25 mil euros, está tudo
my
bem.
Dad.
O cavalo não pode ser.
Worked it out with my dad, like what kind of horse to
Onde é
buy.
que eu vou trabalhar? Eu, a certa altura, acho que ela disse agora: como é que eu vou tomar conta do cavalo? Com um pai que literalmente toma conta de cavalos. Como é que eu vou? Onde é que eu vou pôr esse cavalo, Johnny? Não é que o meu pai tem uma quinta e eu cresci lá, no Texas, e tivemos a falar há pouco sobre isso. Onde é que eu vou pôr esse cavalo? No meu apartamento, Johnny?
And worked it out with my dad, like what kind of horse to buy, and then showed me a picture of this horse and said, it's yours.
Ou seja, foi o pai dela que propôs ao Johnny, ó, tipo, falaram os dois sobre isso, ele comprou-lhe o cavalo, estava tudo arranjado, e ela, não posso aceitar, é muito extravagante. Ir à tua ilha privada, ali ao pé de Miami, está tudo bem, isso podemos ir à vontade. Agora, é pá, obrigado, Marzinho. Agora, estarmos a ir comprar esse cavalo, pá, Johnny, não consigo.
It's coming
Não
here. I
aceito.
think it was being
Obrigado, Marcelo, obrigado pelo
transported,
rei.
and he said, you know, that he had my dad's help on it, picking out. And you know, I grew up on my dad's horses. You know, I grew up riding with my dad. So,
Onde é que eu vou pôr um cavalo?
you know, I went. I had resisted for I think about like a month.
E ela
and a half
adora cavalo.
Him kind of bringing up the idea and me saying that's a crazy gift. No, thank you. No, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't accept too.
Não, não consigo
All of a sudden, I
aceitar.
had a colt.
So,
Ok.
so let's take you through 2012 and your relationship. Could you just
Ai,
describe
com
for the
caralho.
jury a little bit about how that relationship evolved through 2012?
It was always intense. It didn't become intense. It almost started that way. When I was with him, you know, I felt that electricity in my body. I felt like butterflies. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't see straight.
Ou seja, tipo, isto imaginem, isto foi em 2012. Eles casaram-se em 2016, certo? Em 2012 eles começaram a namorar. Casaram em 2016. Portanto, passaram-se 4 anos de namoro. Eles decidiram casar. E, sei lá, tipo 16 meses ou 14 meses depois, estão num processo de divórcio em que ela o acusa de violência doméstica. E nos 4 anos anteriores, o que é que aconteceu?
Practically, it was just, you know, I was head over heels in love, and
Ok.
he felt like that to me. He felt like he was also in love. I didn't feel like he was faking it. I felt like what we
Caguei.
had.
Ela
it felt
ia dizer agora: caguei para esta merda, Johnny, quero-te de volta.
like, to me at the time, there wasn't any love like that.
Mano, mano, imaginem que eles reatavam, puto. Aí, mano, o hate que eles iam levar os dois, puto. O pessoal é emocionalmente investido nesta merda, nesta cruzada. E eles voltavam outra vez, puto. Aí é com caralho, mano. Eu acho que eram excomungados os dois, puto.
No, I mean, and then he would.
Não, Rafa, eu não tenho cartão de crédito,
He
portanto
started
não sei,
to
bro.
kind of do this thing again where he'd disappear and he'd come back. And I remember at first when he first started drinking, I didn't really think much of it, but all of a sudden the behavior kind of started to go in line with the
Pronto,
disappearing, and
começou a
he'd come
beber,
back and
estragou
he'd just
tudo.
be different. And I would say something and he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would it was mostly my clothing at the time and me working. That was the main thing. Like, I found myself trying to not talk about auditions because it would change the mood so dramatically. I tried to, you know, he would make these comments about, you know, whoring myself out, but do so in the context of me acting, you know, and he would talk about other actresses who do my role in this way where they were worthless whores, that they were, you know, fame hungry, you know, expletive, you know, just this. The point is, it felt really dirty to be an actor. Never mind that he was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do this job that I wanted to do, and I was doing the job of an actress. It was everything every time I was walking out of the house, he would ask me, "That's really what you're wearing, kid? Oh, I see." You know, I
Bro, aí é com caralho, mano. Imagina a volta que isto não deu. Ele chamava-lhe Kid. Não é na volta que isto...
Wore a dress to an event once, and I felt beautiful in it. Like, stupid as that sounds, I felt pretty in this dress I picked out, and...
Estupidez, mano. Ai, choradinho. Ai, com estúpido isso pareça, eu sentia-me bem naquele vestido. E ele era um estúpido, machista.
I showed it him because it's a carpet, it's red carpet, so it's like, publicized, and I kind of thought it was weird he wasn't saying anything about it. I left him to go do this red carpet, and I was like, did you see the event I went to? Basically, I felt pretty, and I thought, like, did you see that? I wanted him to say something about that, I guess. And he said,
Ele está-se a suar.
well, this is after he stopped talking to me for some time, didn't tell me why. When he came back in my life, he wouldn't explain why he was acting different. He just kind of acted mad at me and didn't know what I had done wrong. And when I brought up the dress and the event, because it was an event to support a charity I was really involved with at the time, and I said, did you see that thing? And he said, yeah, I think the whole world saw that kid. That's how they'll remember you. That's how the world will remember you. I was like, oh, come on. I mean, it's like, but I felt good in it. I felt good. And he said, yeah, kid, that's what you're putting out there in the world. No one will ever forget that. And that's all they'll see you as. That's what you wanted. That's what you were going for. My dress was low cut. I get it. It's low cut. But I felt...
Bro, what the fuck? Não, isto é relevante, mas puto. What the fuck? Aí é como caralho. Aí, bro, espero bem que ele venha a testemunhar a seguir para desmentir estas merdas, bro. Porque what the fuck, man.
I felt really embarrassed and horrible that I wore that. I felt like, how could I have made that choice? Of course, he's right. You start to believe it. I started to believe that made a lot of sense, of course. But it didn't stop with that. It was clothing in general. And when I walked out of the house, it wasn't just like, hey, you're not allowed to wear that. It was like, oh, really? That's what you're wearing. No wonder you get cast in those roles. No wonder you that's what you are. That's what you're making it.
Ele ri-se.
And it continued. And then...
Ele só se ri.
Nesta fotografia, o candidato...
Obrigado, aliás, ele está-se a rir. Rosa, obrigado pelos 2 meses, mano. Obrigadíssimo, pá.
Bandido.
Jesus Christ.
Bandido.
Obrigado pelos 2 meses, mano. Thank you very much, man. Obrigadíssimo.
Bandido.
Era contra as mulheres, já. Todas.
Bandido.
Johnny, um machista. Obrigado, Ró. Obrigado pelos 2 meses. Era um machista, o Johnny. Engraçado, todas as ex-mulheres dele dizem que ele era um amor de pessoa. Mas a Amber diz que ele era um machista... basicamente era um machista manipulador.
And at first it was just to throw something, smash some things. He loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. Is what it started with.
Ele adora partir
threw
coisas.
glass at me, and I remember it was summer. And he just threw this glass across the kitchen, and it didn't hit me, but it shattered behind me, and I remember thinking that it very easily could have hit me. And that
Cara do gajo. Eu estou a adorar.
very easily could have hit me. And that
Ele assinou com a cabeça, puto.
calling me a whore. It didn't start with using the whore word. It was just
Hey.
comments until it would escalate. And then I started to notice the pattern of escalation where he'd throw glass or turn over a table. Then he would hit the wall, and then he'd hit the wall really close to my head. Like when I'm standing there.
A cara
just
dele,
hit the
mano.
wall.
Foda-se, como caralho.
But then he would disappear and get clean and sober, and he'd come back and tell me that he was done drinking, he was over it, he was done, cleaned himself up, he had done it before, and he'd do it again. And then he would go back to this wonderful, almost just unreal, but real, but unbelievably nice, sensitive, kind, warm, generous.
E ela é tão ingênua que pensou, ele batia-me em paredes e mandava com mesas e atirava-me com copos. Mas depois, como ele tipo, ia para a reabilitação e dizia que ia parar de beber, eu pensei, foda-se, então pronto, olha, está tudo bem.
Interesting, funny
Bro.
man that I loved. And he would make me feel so loved. Like it would get... I would
Ela
feel-
vai-se agarrar à cena da vítima, que é, pronto, a gente não consegue, as vítimas, e vão ficar, e não sei o quê.
so distant from that thing that was so scary that I would not even recognize it too. And that was how, our relationship kind of started to develop in that first year.
Do you remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
Oh, mano, sério, lá vamos nós.
It was it's seemingly so stupid, so insignificant. I will never forget it. It changed my life. I was sitting on the couch and we were talking. We were having a normal conversation, just there was no fighting, no argument, nothing. And he was drinking, and I didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine because it was like there was a jar.
Oh, valha-me Deus, mano. Eu não... Oh, meu Deus, mano.
A jar of cocaine out on the table.
Oh, meu Deus. Lembrei-me agora. Estava um jarro cheio de cocaína. E foi assim, ele tipo, snifou o jarro todo, mandou o jarro para a cara e fez... E pronto, e foi tudo. Logo, foi tudo.
I realize that sounds weird, but it's like
A cara dele, um
an
jarro
actual
de
vintage jar of
cocaína.
it. But I didn't see him use it at the time, so I didn't
Ele
really factor
ri-se.
that in. I just, he's drinking and we're talking, and there's music playing, and he's smoking cigarettes, and we're sitting next to each other on the couch. And I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And to me, it just looked like black marks. I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard
Pergunta-lhe pela tatuagem dele, ele espata-me um chapadão.
to read. And I said, what does it say? And he said it says wino. It says wino. And I didn't see that. I thought he was joking because it didn't look like it said that at all. And I laughed. It was that simple. I just laughed because I thought he was joking. And slapped me across the face. And I laughed.
A cara dele, puto. Oh, mano, isto é fenomenal.
I laughed.
Oh, mano, desculpa. Desculpa, eu não consigo acreditar nesta merda, mano. Pá, é impossível ter o quê?
Because I didn't know what else to do. I thought
Oh, mano, eles não podiam ter arranjado uma história mais convincente, meu. Sei lá, tipo, uma merda qualquer mais... Pá, mais...
this must be a joke.
Pois.
This must be a joke. Because I didn't know what was going on. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke. But he didn't. He said, "You think it's so funny? You think it's funny, bitch? You think you're a funny bitch?" And he slapped me again.
Cara dele, puto.
Like, it was clear it wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to do. You would think you would have a response, but I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I'm an adult, and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason, it seemed like, and I missed the point. It was that stupid. Second slap.
Sim, porque ele basicamente bater-lhe, se tivesse justificação não fazia mal. Tipo, se ele lhe tivesse mandado um chapadão com justificação, ela aceitava e dizia, não, se tivesse justificação eu percebia claramente o chapadão que ele me deu. Mas a partir daí...
Oh, he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to say or do, so I just stared at him. I didn't say anything. I didn't react. I didn't move or freak out or defend myself or say, what are you doing? You're crazy. I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time.
Pimba, mais um chapadão.
I lose my balance. At this point, we're sitting next to each other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch.
Vais chorar.
And I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me
Aí, com
that
cara.
could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking. Because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before, and I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say.
Oh, mano, ela caiu para a carpete e depois de ter levado 2 chapadões do homem que ela ama, ela caiu para a carpete e pensou: foda-se, esta carpete está suja para caralho. É que eu nunca vim aqui com um aspirador limpar esta merda. Isto está mesmo bué sujo. Eia. Oh, Johnny, temos que mandar limpar esta merda, que isto é ridículo.
I didn't know how to react.
Vou-te trazer o meu pai aqui a casa e está isto tudo cagado. Parece que veio aqui um cavalo.
I just
Cagou aqui.
sat there
Como eu caguei na tua cama, Johnny.
thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me?
Pá, desculpa, parece que estou a ver o Aquaman.
No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know, I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. And
Eu estou a tentar ver as lágrimas dela.
that broke my heart.
Vocês-
Because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I'd leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself.
Eu estou a tentar perceber se ela já tinha este brilhozinho aqui em baixo antes. Sabem? Tipo, porque isso fazia a diferença. Deixa-me tentar perceber aqui.
Choice, of course, he's right. You start to believe.
Tem. Foda-se, mano.
The
Genial.
reality, I didn't want to
Genial, puto. Ela já fez a make-up a pensar nisto.
have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know,
Estou a
I'm
tentar
not
ver as
dumb.
lágrimas, não consigo.
I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that.
Oh, mano, então se ela sabia que era assim tão mau, que não podes bater em ninguém, num homem, numa mulher, ela espeta um chapadão nele e no áudio diz que ele estava a ser um bebê.
I had to leave him, and that's what broke my heart because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I'd leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house
Where
and I
are
drew
your
a
tears?
line and
Where's
I
the
stood up
tears?
for myself. But I was just looking at the dirty carpet trying to will myself to get up, to walk out of the door because I knew I needed to. And I really slowly, I stood up and I remember looking at him in the eye and just looking at him, frankly, because I didn't know what else to do. And before I know it, he starts crying. And, I had never seen an adult man cry. I didn't even really see my dad cry at my grandma's funeral. It's weird. And he's crying.
Cereja no topo do bolo. Se até aqui isto estava a ser incrível, ela espeta com a frase típica de gaja completamente louca, que é: eu nunca vi um gajo a chorar. E foi esquisito. Eu olhei para ele estava a chorar. E eu pensei, tu é que me bateste, seu estúpido. Estás a chorar? Estás a chorar? Vais ligar para o 112? Tu não podes sair daqui! Ninguém pode sair daqui!
Tears, I mean, just falling out of his eyes. He gets down on his knees and he grabs my hands and he's touching my hands and he's saying to me, I'll never do that again. I'm so sorry.
Para quem não sabe, meus amigos, isto foi basicamente um paralelismo para o nosso amigo Lopes e o seu TikTok incrível.
I put the fucker away. I thought I killed it and it's done. I thought I put the monster away and I've done it before. It's done. But on his knees. And I didn't have words. I didn't know what to say. I just remember thinking that it was just, he was crying. He seemed so sorry, but I knew I couldn't just forgive him because right? That means it will happen again, no? You know, like I've seen the health class videos, like everyone else. And I got up in my car, I walked to the car, I didn't say anything. I made a point to not say, oh, it's okay, or anything like that. I just didn't say anything. I got up, I went to the car, I sat in my car, and I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window, and I remember just seeing my breath on the windshield, you know, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath and trying to will myself to have the strength to know what I should do in this moment, because I was heartbroken.
Oh man.
And I sat there for a long time, and I eventually turned the key and drove home.
Fui para o carro e vi que o tapete do carro também estava sujo. E eu, foda-se, pá! Tapete da pizza, pá! Também está sujo! Oh, Johnny! Está tudo sujo! Estás a brincar comigo? Voltei lá para dentro, mandei-lhe um chapadão e disse, vai limpar o tapete! Estúpido! Ainda por cima estás aí a chorar.
I don't know. I don't remember what I did when I got home. I don't remember.
É que vais já à bomba da Priu, vais limpar essa merda. Eu vou-te pôr 2 fichas e é bom que eu chegue lá e aquilo esteja tudo aspirado, ouviste? É que aquele aspirador da pista, aquilo não aspira nada, vais aspirar aquilo tudo. Burro! Com 2! Só 2 euros! Ouviste? Não meto mais dinheiro nenhum naquilo. Vais tu aspirar aquela merda e é bom que eu chegue lá e não esteja lá nenhuma pedra no chão, é? Aquilo estava tudo cagado, vais bater com os tapetes na grade, é? Não interessa se estão crianças ao pé, levam com o pó que se foda, Johnny. Vais bater com a puta dos tapetes com força, é? E se não bates com força naquela merda daquela grade, Johnny, levas um tabefe que te fodes, pá. E vai ser à frente de toda a gente. A senhora da bomba também vai. E se tu não consegues, eu vou chegar ao pé dela e vou lhe dizer assim, olha, venha você bater ali na grade que ele não consegue, ele não tem força, coitadinho. É um bebê! Percebes, Johnny?
I went to my therapist.
Que era a psicóloga
I told her.
que a destruiu.
Objection, hearsay.
I'll sustain it as to what she may have told her. I went home and a few days later,
Cagou na
started
terapia.
getting, I actually don't know how many days later, but I started getting calls and texts from Johnny, you know, apologizing profusely. I mean, just, you know, he said, I'd rather cut my hand off than ever lay it on you or lay it upon you, you know, and he had that way of talking. It felt like poetry. And he showed up to talk, like with the understanding that, you know, he understood I could never forgive him and it was done. So I felt kind of safe in saying, okay, let's have a talk, or, you know, yeah, we'll talk.
E ele bateu outra vez.
I think I know I just wanted to see him, and he comes over, brings me gifts. He brought me a couple of cases, actually, of that Vega Sicilia wine that we've heard about, which is a really nice, expensive wine that I could never at that time, a dream of affording, you know. And we talk and
Era agora que lhe podiam fazer a pergunta que fizeram à psicóloga, que era: Senhora Hard, você sabe que se não tivesse namorado com o Johnny Depp nunca estaria aqui, certo? Você sabe que nunca na vida teria os papéis que teve nos seus filmes e etc. Foi essa a pergunta que fizeram à psicóloga. Deviam fazer a esta senhora também, do género.
he tells me that he had put this
Aí já não era
thing
mau.
away, that I could trust him, that it would never happen again. Of course, it would never happen again.
Tudo antes do casamento. Ou seja, ele bateu-lhe antes do casamento e somehow ela pensou: bem, é mesmo um homem para casar, o Johnny.
That he'd put this thing away, he'd killed the fucker, is what he said to me over and over again. I put that fucker away, I killed that monster.
Estou quase a
Como é
chegar
que é,
a um
PJ?
ano.
Obrigado, mano. Obrigado por 10 vezes. Pô. Bem, surreal. Surreal. Esta história toda é surreal, mano. É mesmo surreal esta merda, mano. Foda-se.
It again, it's done.
Obrigado, pá. Obrigado, PJ.
Never lay a hand on you again.
Ok. Está acabado.
And I wanted to believe him, so I chose to.
Chose to stay in the relationship.
Eu depois fui para a terapia depois de ter, pá, de reparar que o meu tapete do chão de casa estava sujo, o meu tapete do carro estava sujo, e eu cheguei à terapista e ela ofereceu-me muffins, a estúpida de merda. Laser, obrigado pelos 10 meses. Obrigado, pá, obrigado pelos 10 meses. A terapia era uma gaja que fazia trap. Fazia trapos. Laser, era uma terapista. Eu percebi que essa palavra na minha cabeça soa mal. Era uma terapista. Mas eu continuei. Terapeuta, desculpem. Às vezes perco-me. Laser, professor com my Hammerhead. Obrigado pelos 10 vezes. Bom, cheguei à terapeuta. Pá, desculpem, vocês estão a entrar. Vocês estão a interferir com o meu acting de método. Ok? Parem. Pronto, ela chegou à terapeuta e disse: e a estúpida ofereceu-me muffins. Isso tinha sido o marido que os foi buscar. Estúpida de merda. E o meu que me tinha batido por causa de uma carpete. Puto.
Yeah, I did. I believed it, but I believed it wouldn't. I believed that there was a line he wouldn't cross again, and that was it.
Ok. E depois, o que é que aconteceu a seguir? E o que é que ele fez? Voltou.
And so you stayed, correct? You stayed in the relationship.
Sim. Pois,
Yes.
Okay.
calcula-se que sim.
So
Isso aconteceu quando?
is this a good time? You want to
You can keep going a little longer, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So could you please describe for the jury the evolution of your relationship after that time?
Isto foi da
with
Coca.
Johnny?
I don't know how long it was until things got bad again.
Mano, esta senhora, tipo, eu acho incrível como é que ela chora tanto e a maquilhagem dela está flawless. Tipo, porra, meu, esta marca de maquilhagem, valha-me Deus, puto, deve estar a faturar milhões, puto. Fascinante. Está igual.
He did start drinking again. I remember
É à prova d'água.
it was almost, he start drinking again, the disappearing thing, the coming back. He'd come back at like in the middle of the night to my house. And it would be unclear to me, drunk, often really drunk, and kind of accusing me, but not directly. Nothing was very direct. It was a lot of accusations, but they were veiled. What I was wearing, who I was with, why didn't I text him back? I didn't text him back right away. This is when I was at my place in Orange. Sometimes he would show up to catch me. Like that was a pretext for coming over. And
A cara dela a rir-se.
by the time we were done talking, would be, I would have thought I had convinced him that I loved him, that I only loved him, there was no one else, and then that we were back in an upswing and would go back to good, loving, like sick, romantic love, like kind, sweet, velvety love. And then it would be something I said, why did you say it that way? You know, if I had to leave for an audition, I could guarantee that when I, couldn't guarantee, but two of those in a row, and when I came back, he was angry at me, you know, and I wouldn't necessarily know why. And then he started accusing me of things, probably, like, at first it was indirect, and then it became really direct. Then the punching of the walls next to my head, which is a constant at that time in 2012, when he was drinking.
Foda-se, o homem andava assim para... O Johnny Depp era um homem que partia paredes. Pá, eu curtia bué de saber como é que, em que estado é que estava a casa, que devia estar cheio de marcas na parede, meu. Por exemplo, quando os meus vizinhos de baixo se mudaram lá para a casa de baixo, nós fomos lá ver a casa deles, e a casa deles, o teto estava todo cheio de marcas de vassoura no teto, porque a minha vizinha de baixo, a minha ex-vizinha de baixo, batia imensas vezes com a vassoura no teto, basicamente, porque nós fazíamos barulho, entre aspas. Conclusão. Quando fomos lá, a mulher tinha marcas de vassoura em todas as divisões da casa. Eu curtia bué de ver esta casa onde o Johnny morou, porque queria bué perceber como é que estavam as paredes, meu. E não sei como é que ela não tirou fotos, e como é que não há fotos dessas paredes todas fodidas, que o Johnny Depp devia ser o Mike Tyson das paredes. Tipo, para que vocês fazerem uma carreira no boxe? O homem está completamente errado. Porque é que ele foi para ator? Mais valia ter ido para... Foda-se, o gajo devia ter ido para MMA, meu. Uma merda do género. Se ele bate em paredes e fica bem...
That became...
parecia um
you
barbequinho.
know, him accusing me of cheating. I'd defend myself. I'd say, you know, that's crazy. You're wrong. I would never. The normal things. And it would escalate to the point where he would push me or shove me down, and then I'd get back up. And this happened several times. That's why it's not more specific, I suppose. When I'd get back up, I'd look him in the eye. I made a point of getting up and looking him in the eye. It's my way of defending myself at that time. And I'd look at him, and he'd ask me if I wanted to go again, and shove me back down.
Ele deve estar mesmo a desenhar. E sabem o que é que eu acho? Eu acho que tipo, ele estar a rabiscar e a desenhar deve ser tipo a forma dele de estar tipo, a tentar libertar-se desta merda. Tipo, ele tá ali, mas é como se ele não estivesse ali, sabem? Eu acho que ele está bué, tipo, a usar a cena da arte, porque já se percebeu que ele pinta bué e tipo, pá, e pronto, e faz esse tipo de cenas, e ele deve usar essa cena para tipo, se afastar bué desta realidade. E há para se abstrair disto. E isto é um comportamento bué típico de uma pessoa que não quer estar tipo ali naquela situação.
Eventually, he just hit me. Remember, he hit me in the face when I denied having an affair with my ex-wife, my ex-partner at the time. And he said he had proof. I denied it. And I was walking out of the bedroom, slapped me across the face. I turned to look at him. And I said, Johnny, you hit me. You just hit me.
I'm going to ask you, Michelle, can you bring up 1783, please?
What number again, please?
I'm sorry,
What number?
defendants 1783?
1783, thank you.
Ok, provas. Ela está a beber água cor-de-rosa.
Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, I do.
And could you tell us what it is?
It's a picture of my face with a note that Johnny left
Foda-se, ela
for
falou ainda
me
bué da
by
tempo.
the coffee. Typically is where we'd leave notes like that.
And does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
It was one of those scenes as embarrassing as it sounds now, I don't know which scene this came from. There was a lot. It escalated quickly.
Ok, quero ver a prova.
Your Honor, we have an objection and may we
Okay,
approach?
sure.
Ok. Queria ver.
Some of the cycles you had with Mr. Depp through 2012.
Was pretty, you know, relative to what it became, pretty, you know, slapping, backhanding. Well, it went from it went from this eggshell kind of, you're walking on eggshells, nothing you're doing is kind of right, but you don't know what you're doing wrong. And then I was doing something wrong clearly, but it was unclear within the scope of an argument what I was defending myself against. So it would shift from a rumor he had heard that I was with a friend, or I had been photographed standing too close to a male person. That was a person I had something with, and I was lying to him about, and then it would be eggshells, accusations, and then he would explode. It started with throwing things, destroying the property, and screaming at me. I remember the screaming at me was the worst, because I kind of always felt like I had done, I had to defend myself. I had to tell him so he didn't think these things were true. And sometimes, he would shift accusations while I'm trying to dispel one accusation. He'd start another one, and nothing I could do to calm him down. It seemed like I'd walk away, and that would make it worse. I remember in my apartment in Orange, he would grab me by the hair, or he'd grab me by the arm, pull me into him.
Foda-se, tipo, então foi constante. Tipo, segundo o que ela está a dizer, foram agressões constantes, não foi tipo uma vez ou outra, foi tipo todos os dias praticamente ele fazia alguma coisa.
At me that way, he'd smash things around me, then he would smash things very close to me, and then he would just hit me. And
nunca ninguém reparou, e mais do que isso, ela casou com ele a seguir. Tipo, anos disto, e ela casou. Tipo, antes dele a agarrar-lhe no cabelo, pá, foda-se, puto, pronto. Se é possível, mas porra, mano, Jesus Christ. Altamente improvável, tipo, imaginem, não estamos a falar de uma senhora cuja realidade é tipo, não consegue fugir daquela realidade. Estamos a falar de uma gaja que tem milhões e que numa situação destas, tipo, basta abrir a boca e fode o gajo completamente. E mete-lhe uma restraining order, porque foi o que ela fez depois, mais tarde. Acho estranho. Pois, olha, é o que o Ant está a dizer. O que é bizarro é que como é que uma pessoa que gravou imensas cenas às escondidas não tem provas desta merda toda. Extremamente bizarro, mano.
It started with slapping, and it got to be like repetitive slaps where he'd hold me in a position and slap me multiple times in a row.
Parece a Raw.
Then it would be, eventually I later would either push him off of me, or I'd try to hit his hands away from me. I tried to, not in 2012 so much. At that time, I was mostly, my defense was, I'd go some other place. Like, I don't know how to describe that.
Que curioso que é exatamente aquilo que ele faz. Tipo, aquilo que ele diz que faz. É o que ela agora disse que fazia.
I'd focus on something else. I'd stand up, look at him, try to stand up to him that way. Later, I adopted other kind of strategies to deal with it. But at the time, in 2012, it was, he'd have this blowout, and then he would leave, disappear, and I'd be committed to not talking to him. I'm done with this relationship. I can't take it anymore. I said that so many times. And then he'd come back, clean and sober, telling me either he had a chip. He didn't have any chips, but he would say, I've gone to meetings.
Nunca se soube disto. Durante anos.
I have a sober companion now. I'm doing this program. I'm reading this. I'm doing this. And he was done with drugs and alcohol for good this time. And he'd come back in my life, and with the combination of him being sober and...
Esta gaja vai se queimar tanto, meu. Esta gaja vai se queimar, bué. Quando for a vez dos advogados dele, ela vai se queimar mesmo, meu. Ela vai se queimar, bué. Porque ela teve bué de comportamentos contrários a isto, que são provas, mano. Ela vai se queimar para caralho com isto, meu.
And having gone through this horrible thing where I felt like my heart
Este depoimento dela vai lixá-la muito, meu.
Relationship ending is hard, I think, for anyone, but ending under that circumstance is really painful. And so when he'd come back, it would almost feel like a solution to that, and it would feel great, and we would be good again, and he'd be extra nice and extra apologetic and extra loving, and we'd be back in the good bubble, the warm glow. And eventually I'd get bored, and then I'd see him drinking again. When I started to get upset, noticing the pattern of the violence going with the drinking and drugs, then he started sneaking it. So it became less clear, and I'd have to look for clues as to what he was on. So I just knew how to react, you know. Johnny on speed is very different from Johnny on opiates. Johnny on opiates very different from Adderall and cocaine Johnny, which is very different from Quaaludes Johnny. But I had to get good at paying attention to the different versions of him.
Vários anos.
2012, I was in the beginning stages of this, just learning these patterns. I was
E ela não
just
mudou, ela
learning
nunca
that
usou
drinking
drogas
kind of
no
correlated
meio
with
desta
the
tudo.
violence.
And did you confide in anyone about these issues you were having?
Ok.
I think she
Objection,
can say if
hearsay.
I think she can say if she told anybody.
As long as she doesn't say what she said.
Yeah,
Right.
exato.
Right. So did you tell anyone?
Yes, I did.
Who did you tell?
I told my therapist. I eventually told my mom.
And let's go ahead and take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 150.
Vai ser uma mensagem dela com a mãe.
150.
Querem ver? Aposto que é uma mensagem dela com a mãe. É que aqui não mostra as provas.
Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay. Yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Did you confide in your mother? Did you decide to confide in your mother about the issues you were having with Mr. Depp?
I think I felt safe talking to my mom because I knew that she understood these dynamics and she wouldn't judge me for staying with him, for loving him, even though
Típico de
this
mãe,
was
né?
happening. And
Tipo, a minha
it was
filha
happening
leva na boca, mas pá, está tudo bem, eu percebo.
to me.
Super normal.
I knew she would understand.
And when approximately did you start confiding in your mom about your issues with Mr. Depp and the physical abuse?
Objection, hearsay, compound.
I sustain as to compound.
When did you start confiding in your mother about the abuse you were suffering at the hands of Mr. Depp?
I was confiding in her from the very beginning about the abuse, the psychological abuse that kind of in a secretive way, and then he'd come to mine in a secretive way, and it was just all very, so very
Pronto,
isolated.
vai entrar em pausa. Eu
I confided
vou
with
entretanto
her
acabar a stream, malta.
at the very beginning
Depois vemos o
on that
resto.
sort of thing, and
noutra altura.
then later opened up to her about some of the violence. I did it gently. First I just wanted to have someone to talk to about how scary it was. His
É a advogada dela.
rage and the uncontrolled violence, the rage that this man had, and why it was
Objection,
pointed
Your
at
Honor,
me.
hearsay. May we approach, please?
Pimba.
Gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take our 15 minutes.
Pronto, 15 minutes break. Ele nem sequer olha para ela, man. Jesus Christ. Bem, anyway. Bem, não sei, olhem. Marado esta merda. Absurdo. Valha-me Deus, pá.